On Prime Crime. A vicious murder of a child ignites a search for a killer.
He just asked me if I ever killed somebody.
The victim wrote to her mother, "Mom, someone is knocking on the door."
Hey there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we break down the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. A young girl is found murdered, but what she does beforehand leads investigators to the main suspect.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
Hi. My sister, we just got home. She went home alone. They killed, I think, they killed my sister. I don't know what to do.
This chilling 911 phone call is from August 10th, 2017. It was placed in a mobile home park out in Goodlettsville, Tennessee by Patricia Velasquez and her daughter, Jocelyn Ortega.
And listening to 911 tapes and, working with them in a number of homicide cases during my time as a prosecutor, that pain of a mother sounds the same in no matter what language you hear it. That there's just a certain tone. And once you hear it, it sits with you.
Tell me exactly what happened.
So my daughter is 12 years old. I went to work at SOLVES. I worked for here at and it seems that somebody came into the trailer, broke in, they choked her, and it seems like they raped her.
This began the investigation into the death of 12-year-old Johanna Ortega.
Johanna's murder was one of the more brutal cases that I've reviewed. It happened in a location that I think that most 12-year-olds would feel safe and secure, and that's in their home. When this child was found, she was found with a martial arts belt wrapped around her neck, not once, but twice. It was secured in the back with a double knot. Her cause of death ultimately is an asphyxial death. It's an asphyxial death by strangulation. Whoever did this took their time. When this child's earbuds were recovered, they were soaked in blood. These devices were in her ear, perhaps. As she is being choked out, she didn't see this guy coming.
And it only gets worse from there.
There was a bit of disrobing that went on here. Anytime that you have the appearance of an event that might have a sexual connotation, you're always going to do a sexual assault kit.
Police arrive on the scene and begin to canvass the area. At one point, Detective Chris Bowden interviews Johanna's neighbor, Roy Coons Jr.
How you doing? Doing well. You live here? Yeah. You been here pretty much all day, or?
I've been in and out.
You never saw anything unusual, strange, nothing stood out to you, like I've never seen that guy before?
No.
Roy Coons, though, is an ex-con who has quite the history.
This is a man who has been arrested 102 times. And his first arrest started when he was 19 years old. In 1999, he was convicted of his third DUI guilty. 2001, he was guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. 2006, he's guilty of 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. 2010, guilty of aggravated burglary. Now, during this span of his first arrest from 1991 to 2020, he also had 13 probation violations.
This initial interaction with law enforcement ends peacefully.
All right, man.
Well, yeah, if I think anything or see anything,
I appreciate it.
But a short while later, Coons gets into a dispute with other officers.
why are y'all keep coming to me for?
Well, I was trying to calm you. I was trying to calm you
I'm
down.
at home. I know my property. I'm not bothering you. I don't bother nobody. I stay with myself.
Do you still have my phone number?
Yes, I have it. And I told them out there, they repeatedly kept on. I have his number. I know his name and everything.
Right.
And then they come over here and ask me the same questions again.
Anytime that you're on the scene of one of those crimes and the police are there for a long time, you're going to have your looky-loos. You're going to have your people that kind of stand around and watch. But there was something about Roy Coons that stood out to the female officer. She was the second officer that arrived on the scene, and she went, I feel like I need to go talk to him.
If you had a 12-year-old daughter that was killed, would you or would you not want us to do everything that we possibly can to find out what took place?
What happened down there? Her daughter got killed?
She's dead.
I know them, man.
Are you agitated because of the horrors of what happened in your neighborhood? That's completely logical. But at the same token, you do have to recognize that law enforcement does need to do their job and conduct an investigation. Why can't you just provide the basic information needed so we can eliminate you as a suspect and move on to the next person?
No, man, I'm not even involved in that. I got enough going on.
And the only reason we want to talk to you a little more is because you were home a little more than everybody else.
And like I said, I'm inside most of the time. I don't come out because I know how I am.
Right.
And I get riled up.
You just keep my number.
I got your number.
And it changes.
If I see anything or hear anything in front,
You call.
and I will.
Before police leave, they notice Coons throw a cigarette butt on the ground, and they quickly pick it up.
If you find something that has been discarded, there will be some element of you perhaps left behind. And what finer example of this than a cigarette butt? You're touching the exterior of the cigarette. But more importantly, you're essentially inoculating and introducing your saliva into the filter. You can find red blood cells in there. And of course, red blood cells are a fine source for DNA.
When we return, Coons is interviewed again by police. But is he the killer or someone else?
The DNA evidence shows that there are some other profiles that were not identified.
Dementia is now known as type 3 diabetes, according to the Mayo Clinic.
12-year-old Johanna Ortega is discovered by her mother, sister, and brother savagely murdered in their home in Tennessee. There's also evidence of attempted sexual assault. Investigators are piecing together not only how this happened, but who could have done it. Police take an interest in Roy Coons Jr., an ex-con and neighbor to Ortega. They interview him outside of his trailer home days after the murder.
I mean, I really don't know him that much to put an idea on what happened or, what they had going on, or if you go into the house and she, surprised them. But I mean, even then, still, that wouldn't make no sense. Why turn a burglary into a murder? I guess it's one of those things you just have to put yourself in that situation to find out.
They went there to question him because he was somebody of interest that one of the officers noticed on the scene.
Were you home all that day leading up through?
I left, I went and got some cigarettes. I was in the shed pretty much the whole time until I came out to go to the mailbox. And then I came back out, sat around, smoked a cigarette, went back in, watched the movie on my phone. I was dog sitting for a friend of mine. I grabbed the dog, we went to Cedar Hill Park. I spent maybe 35, 40 minutes there.
There's that building rapport, right? So kind of breaking the guard down, getting someone to be more relaxed and at ease. So then when that person feels at ease, they may slip.
Yeah, it belongs to my dad's best friend. He passed away.
Okay.
Don't want to work that out.
So you've been inside?
Yes. Multiple times.
Have you been inside since Patricia's on it?
Just the doorway entrance. I was there Monday. When I went down there and asked her about the lawnmower, she did the lawnmower, and then a couple of times prior to that.
Is there any reason that we could ever possibly find your DNA on her?
I mean, I shook their hand and stuff like that. It sounds.
That exchange would be critical for a very important reason.
Roy's DNA was found in 3 locations. It was found on the back of a windowsill. on a shirt, and on a sock. Roy's DNA wasn't found on the yellow karate belt that she was strangled with, a tissue, a pillow, a mattress, a bed rail, her bra, her shirt, a Cheetos wrapper, the bedspread, and her left breast. But where a YSTR match, where it could be him or a paternal linkage to him, was found on a facial swab of hers, it was found on her right buttocks and her left arm.
DNA aside, none of the prints at the crime scene matched Coons.
It's very difficult many times to find a latent print, or we don't have prints on the ends of our fingers. These are easily obliterated. You know, you got to keep in mind, and this is quite fascinating, the day after the homicide, Coons was actually walking down the road, and there was a police officer that was there. One of the things that the police officer noticed is that Coons had latex gloves hanging out of his pocket during that interaction.
Police asked Coons about potential suspects.
Can't see any strange vehicles out here.
There was 2 Mexicans down there fighting. And one of them was in a truck, a big custom truck or something, and came up this way. There's a green Toyota truck. And every time he comes up down through there, he almost stops real slow.
Which is interesting, considering what else was discovered at the crime scene.
There were other profiles of other men's DNA that were found on that scene, in that room, and on her body.
Coming up, Johanna does something right before she's killed that leads law enforcement to their primary suspect.
You begin to think about the text message that Johanna sent out to her mother earlier in the day. It almost denotes this idea of fear.
In August 2017, law enforcement's investigating the murder and attempted rape of 12-year-old Johanna Ortega. At one point, police interview Johanna's neighbor Roy Coons Jr., who actually did work for Johanna and her family.
She know I cut grass around here, so she approached me and asked me about cutting grass.
Coons says he didn't kill Johanna. Strangely, though, DNA evidence from certain parts of the crime scene link back to Coons.
I wouldn't kill a child if somebody had a gun. I'm not going to let you take that child. And if I had some kind of knowledge, you know, I would do what I had to do to protect her if it cost me my life.
Coons is asked a provocative question.
What do you think should happen to the person that hurt this little girl?
Same thing. Whatever happened to her should happen to him. I would pretty much make sure that they endure whatever my child is. You know, like I was telling you yesterday, Miss Joe's sister-in-law was taking care of rape and strangulation and stuff like that.
There's only one problem with that statement.
He had intimate knowledge of the events that had not been released to the public. He talked about things like sexual assault, strangulation. First off, he was hanging around, and now he has intimate knowledge of a scene, something that no one else has had eyes on.
Because I have been on so many of these scenes in apartment complexes and trailer parks, and I used to work on Dickerson Road. I do believe it's possible that it could have been overheard and the game of telephone got played that, oh, she was strangled and raped.
But there's something else. Right before Johanna was killed, as she was home alone nursing an injured ankle, she sent a series of text messages to her mother. These final words from Johanna would help police in a major way.
At 4:15, the victim wrote to her mother, "Mom, someone is knocking on the door." And then at 4:19, the victim wrote back to her mother, "I think it was the man who cuts the yard." And at that point, I knew that was very important because I was at the crime scene and I knew that one of the suspects was the caretaker of the lawn.
If it wasn't for the grass cut, I don't think I would have ever met him.
The text message is a huge component. It puts him there. It puts him in contact with her right around the time that she was murdered.
That gives you chills when you begin to think of it. Looking for a perpetrator that is predatory in nature, who would have the opportunity to conduct this observation, to see that this child is at home by themselves, and to understand the environment, the scene, if you will, and all of that comes together in kind of this horrible, horrible storm.
In September 2017, Roy Coons Jr. is arrested and ultimately charged with the murder and attempted rape of Johanna Ortega. Yet, is the evidence against him strong enough for a jury to convict?
I would have liked to have seen them narrow it down a little bit more and had a little bit more with the DNA than shutting it down in 6 weeks and going, this is definitely it.
In August 2017, 12-year-old Johanna Ortega is found by her mother, sister, and brother murdered, and there's even evidence of attempted sexual assault. A month later, the family's neighbor, Roy Coons Jr., is arrested and charged in connection with Johanna's death. In July 2019, Coons went on trial for multiple charges, including first-degree murder. The prosecution laid out their case.
You have the DNA that shows he was in contact with her around the time that she was murdered.
DNA YSTR profile on the right cheek, on the right buttocks, and it was the exact same YSTR profile as Roy Coons Jr.
You'll look at his statements, you'll look at his knowing certain facts about the crime that only law enforcement and the person committing the crime would have known.
He knows that Johanna has been strangled. That information was not public at the time the defendant knew it.
The text message, the basically words from beyond the grave that came from Johanna.
4:19 p.m. she identifies that the man who was knocking on the door of her trailer that day was the man who cuts the lawn. All the proof you've heard has shown that Roy Coons was the man who cut their lawn at that trailer.
You put all of that together, and that is what shows guilt.
However, this is not so simple as it seems.
Roy Coons did not kill, did not attempt to rape, and he did not burglarize Johanna Ortega's mobile home. You're not going to hear from a single eyewitness that Mr. Coons went in that mobile home on that day. You're not going to see any video footage from security cameras showing that he did that. You're not going to hear from any witnesses that he had any motive or had attempted to do anything to this family in the past. DNA that was recovered in this case belonging to Mr. Coons was a matter of a few cells. No semen, no blood, no other identifiable bodily fluid.
The biggest struggles for the prosecution in this case has to do with the fact that there's no real direct evidence.
The other part that the state's not wanting to talk about is the fact that we have 3 other known hits in CODIS to people's DNA that were in that trailer.
One of the people that they identified as having DNA there in the scene in her body is a person who was on probation or had been on probation. And they talked to his mom and they talked to the probation officer, and nobody knew where he had been. They ruled out a couple other people, but also there's people they didn't rule out.
Yet before the trial concluded, the prosecution presented another piece of evidence for the jury to consider. They alleged that after Johanna was killed, Coons went to live in a homeless encampment, and while there, he made a startling admission.
He just asked me if I ever killed somebody. I didn't ask him if he ever did, but he told me he has. He didn't tell me who he was or how long it was, but he said he did. This is his word, that sticks with you. That's what he said. I was so freaked out. I never get scared.
Many people will make comments about these events without stating the specifics of the event. He's got this burden, this thing that gnaws at him. He's sleeping in a wooded area not too far away from the victim, and I think that tells you a lot.
We, the jury, by the defendant Ronald Don Coons Jr. in count 1, guilty of second-degree murder.
Y'all getting fucked up.
Count 2, felony murder, guilty. Count 4, guilty of attempted rape of a child. Count 5,
500
guilty
years, twin.
of
500.
aggravated criminal trespass.
I I am not surprised that the jury found him guilty of second-degree murder as opposed to first-degree murder. So first-degree murder suggests premeditation. It means that you plan to commit this crime. To me, it sounds like the jury looked at all this evidence and felt like it was a crime of opportunity. That he was in the area, happened to see that Johanna was alone or figure out that she was alone, and took advantage in that moment.
Nonetheless, Coons was sentenced to life in prison plus an additional 25 years.
This was one of those cases that really tugs at the heartstrings. I mean, you see this family, that horrible, horrible day is seared into their memory, and I just can't even imagine the pain that this family is going through and will continue to go through, because we all know that a guilty verdict, while that may be the end of the case, is not the end of the trauma and the grieving journey of those that are left behind.
When looking back at this case, the DNA evidence, the police tapes, the words of the defendant, it all led to his conviction. But you have to think that Johanna's text to her mom really helped seal Coons' fate. And in a way, this 12-year-old girl was able to catch her own killer. As always, thanks for joining us here on Prime Crime. And until next time, stay safe.
The worst I've ever seen in my life.
She fought like a real hero for her kids. They were doing their homework when they got murdered.
They were stacked on top of one another, and the tub was full of water.
You can't drown children while you stare into their gasping faces without being the devil, you know?
Why would someone want to kill children? Do you have any idea why someone would want to do that?
Just being a black man inside of a small room with two white guys with guns, kind of scared, intimidated a little bit.
That guy really hates women. Maybe a woman might get under his skin.
She's asking the same question over and over.
Be quiet.
No, she's...
Be quiet.
What it says on the back of this envelope is death before dishonor.